Philoxenos of Mabbug, whose feast day was celebrated yesterday, December the 10th. And today, in this message, we will look at the life of Philoxenos, as we have seen with the other saints earlier, and understand why he is, one, venerated as a saint, but secondly, what is it that he was seeking to teach? Why did he suffer so much? What was he trying to hand down to the future generations? And when we talk about the life of Philoxenos, it's very important for us to look at the situation, the background of what is happening at the time when Philoxenos is born and he is serving in the Holy Church during this period. And that is the period after the Council of Chalcedon, also called Chalcedon, which was in 451. In the year 451, this council gathered to discuss the divinity and humanity of Jesus Christ. We know before from past sessions, from our Orthodoxy sessions as well, about the early church, that there are three councils that were universally accepted. The Council of Nicaea, which, as we know, we are celebrating the 1700th anniversary this year. The Council of Nicaea, which was held in 325 CE in Nicaea. The Council of Constantinople, which was held in 381. And then the Council of Ephesus, which was held in 431. 20 years after the Council of Ephesus, the Council of Chalcedon is held. What we see here is that it is not participated in or by all of the bishops of the larger church. In fact, it was not one that was universally accepted. And we know that this council leads to a schism or a break in the church, and we come up with different divisions within the church from the point of this council. And we know that two main groups arise out of this council. One is the Chalcedonian side, which is the group of people, the churches and communities that accepted the Council of Chalcedon, and this was also approved by the emperor of the Roman Empire. But then there were those who rejected this council and what it taught or proclaimed, and this was the non-Chalcedonian or anti-Chalcedonian communities. And these later are known later as the Coptic Church, the Syriac Church, and the Armenian Church. Of course, when we talk about this is also called the Eastern Orthodox and Catholic Church is the Chalcedonian, and then later the non-Chalcedonian are the Oriental Orthodox churches, names that are applied later on. But at this point, around the year 500 and 600, a few decades after the Council of Chalcedon, we see that the Christian world is split up. Now, this is a rough estimate. This is not 100% accurate, but it gives us a general idea of what the Christian world looked like. So we see here, there are some people out here in orange who are Nestorian. These are the people who accepted the teachings of Nestorius and followed his faith or his teachings. The idea that Saint Mary cannot be called Theotokos, Mother of God. She should be called Christotokos, because she's the mother of the human being, Jesus Christ, because God can't be in the womb of a human. That was his understanding and his explanation. Those who followed him were more concentrated in the eastern side of what we would call now the Middle East. Everything in purple, for the most part, falls under the Roman Empire. This is mainly where the Chalcedonian, the ones who accepted this idea of Chalcedon, the idea really of two natures, a nature of humanity and divinity, even after the Lord is incarnate, even after he takes flesh, he is human and divine as two natures. Whereas the non-Chalcedonian communities, as we can see, are concentrated more in parts of Egypt, a little bit down into Ethiopia, which we know that's why the Ethiopian Orthodox Church follows the faith of the first three councils only. And then we have the Syriac and Armenian communities here. There were some areas here in purple also that had areas or pockets of non-Chalcedonian presence of the faith that followed or accepted only the first three councils. Now, what is it that the Council of Chalcedon taught? It taught again that there were two natures, that before Christ took flesh, he was human, he was divine, but then once the incarnation happened, he is in two natures. In the incarnation, he is human and he is divine. And we'll talk about later what are the implications or the end results of such a formula. The Coptic, the Syriac, the Armenian, the non-Chalcedonians denied that and said, we don't accept that idea. We believe in one incarnate or united nature where humanity and divinity are together. They can't be confused, but they are still there together as one united nature. And the Chalcedonian church, or the Chalcedonian churches, accused the non-Chalcedonian churches of being monophysite, mono meaning one, only believing in one nature. But that's not what the faith of these churches, later the Oriental Orthodox churches, are. The faith of the church is that Christ had one incarnate or composite nature where humanity and divinity are both present. They don't mix, they don't mingle, they can't be confused, but they are united, meaning that there is humanity and divinity fully there. It might seem like semantics to us, but as we'll see later, this has great meaning in understanding the person of Christ, through whom which you are and we all are saved. We see that as time goes on, Christianity grows in different parts of the empire, and we see a mixing of different communities present all around here. And it is into this community, in this region here, that more Philoxenos is born. He is born as another name. He's called, in some places, he is called as Zaniah in some Greek forms. In other places, we see that his name from birth is Oxniah. Oxniah or Zaniah, they're both referring to the same name that he was given. He's later called Philoxenos once he becomes a bishop. But he was born in this region of Beth Garmai. It is believed to be before 450. So before actually the actual Council of Chalcedon is when he is born. He's born in this region. And we can see in modern day Iraq, close to parts of Iran, this is where he is believed to have been born. And as we move on, we see that he is educated in the city of Edessa, and he eventually learns theology, learns the faith, and he's ordained in Antioch. And most likely this ordination happened by the hands of Patriarch Peter the Fuller. He's called the Fuller because that's a title given to a person who was a textile worker, someone who would engage in wool and in textiles. Before he went to theological studies and later entered the ordained ministry, this patriarch was his occupation was to work as a textile worker, and that's why he's given the name Peter the Fuller. And during this time there were many controversies, but Philoxenos at this time is very much educated, and he is very well versed in the theological discussions of the time. And there comes a time where there's a great controversy about the Trisagion. The Trisagion that you and I know to be now, Holy art thou, O God, holy art thou, Almighty, holy art thou, immortal, crucified for us, have mercy on us, as we just prayed during our evening prayers. But this is not what was originally stated in the larger Christian world before this. We might see in many places, such as in places of Eastern Orthodox worship, that they say, Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Mortal, have mercy on us. But Patriarch Peter the Fuller and more Philoxenos added another phrase there, crucified for us, have mercy on us. If we just look at the first three parts and just have mercy on us, it seems that in the early Christian world, this was just addressing God the Father, because he is God, he is mighty, he is immortal. But more Philoxenos and Patriarch Peter added crucified for us in order to address Christ the Son specifically, being that it is through him that we received salvation. That's not to say that he is in a way greater than God the Father, because we know that they are all part of the Holy Trinity. They are all persons, distinct persons in the Holy Trinity. But this was meant to further address Christ the Son. Again, a theological debate at the time. And he, Patriarch Peter, as well as Philoxenos, received much criticism for adding this, in a way being seen as a change. But as we know, again, in the Oriental Orthodox tradition, when we say the Trisagion, we have crucified for us there as a way of addressing Christ the Son. This Trisagion is not addressing God the Father or the Trinity in general in the Oriental Orthodox tradition. We are addressing Christ the Son who died on the cross for us. Again, this is connected to the argument of Chalcedon, because what happened over time is those who taught the faith of the Council of Chalcedon said, well, Christ was human and he was divine, so we can break down the activities of Christ. He did this as a human, for example, in the town of Bethany when he cries or weeps before Lazarus's tomb. It's because that's his human side. And then when he's doing the miracles, that's his divine side. So we can separate the two. But Philoxenos taught, no, that's absolutely absurd that you say that, because Christ has taken flesh. The Word of God, the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, has taken flesh. We can't say that at this moment he's human, at this moment he's divine. It's a united nature. It's a composite nature. Humanity and divinity are present together. We can't tell which one is acting at a given time. And the reason for this, why those in the Chalcedonian side argued against this, is because they said we can't state for sure that Christ, the divinity part of Christ, died on the cross. And so they didn't like this idea of saying crucified for us. They said, well, you shouldn't state that explicitly, because then you're talking about God dying on the cross. And Philoxenos said, yes, God did die on the cross. He died for our sins and he died for our salvation. And so he was very much adamant and stern in adding crucified for us here. As a result of these disputes, unfortunately, a new patriarch who came exiled Philoxenos from his place where he was serving with the former patriarch, Patriarch Peter. And this dispute over the nature of Christ led him to be removed from his position as a priest who was serving there at the time, as a deacon as he was serving at the time. But what we see here is that because things were fluid, the Council of Chalcedon had just happened 30 years before. There were still certain bishops who thought, oh, well, Chalcedon, maybe that council makes some sense. Maybe we should follow it. So in this early period of 100 or 200 years after Chalcedon, we see that people are still trying to figure out where their allegiance stands. Is it with the emperor and the Council of Chalcedon, or is it with the outside communities like the Coptic or the Syriac or the Armenians? So they start to have disputes. And more Philoxenos suffers as a result of that. He is exiled. And we keep going. In 485, Peter the Fuller is reinstalled. In a span of about 10 years, there are 3 or 4 different patriarchs in Antioch, one after another. Finally, Peter the Fuller is reinstalled. And on August the 18th, 485, Patriarch Peter ordains this priest as more Philoxenos for the diocese of Mabbug, which is how more Philoxenos is called Philoxenos of Mabbug. And during his ministry, more Philoxenos wrote extensively about ascetical practices, monasticism, and also the Christological controversies. What does the Orthodox faith mean? What does it mean to be Miaphysite, meaning of a composite nature of Christ? And he was a staunch defender of this Miaphysite Christology, the nature of Christ as described by the non-Chalcedonian, the anti-Chalcedonian churches. But again, we see here that during this period, there is much dispute about what should happen. Luckily, in this period when he was a bishop early on, the patriarch of the church, Flavius II, who reigned from 498 to 512, was very much supportive of what more Philoxenos taught, and he promoted him. And after 512 comes a great father of the church, Saint Severus or Severius, who we read and proclaim in the 5th Tubdin. He becomes the patriarch of Antioch. More Philoxenos was a senior bishop in the synod that installed more Severius as the patriarch of Antioch. But what we see here after a 6-year period is that things change because a new emperor rises to the throne in Constantinople. a new emperor who does not want at all to allow the non-Chalcedonian churches to survive, he comes to power, and that happens in the year 518. Emperor Justin the First, not Justinian, who we might have studied before in world history. Justin the First, he comes before Justinian. He unleashes a persecution across the eastern borders and regions of the Roman Empire. He exiles Patriarch Severus from Antioch, and Patriarch Severus or Severius has to flee to Egypt. Now, this is the last time in 518 that a patriarch of the Syriac Orthodox faith, of the non Chalcedonian churches, this is the last time that a patriarch sits on the seat in Antioch or reigns from Antioch. From 518 onwards, that has not happened in history. As we know, over time, the patriarchate shifts and moves from place to place. It is in for a long time in the city of Mardin in modern day Turkey. It moves to Homs in Syria, then finally to Damascus, where it is currently. Likewise, just as Patriarch Severus is exiled, Philoxenos is also exiled. First, he is sent to the region of Thrace, and then finally to the city of Gangra. And we'll see that on a map. He is sent from this region of where Mabbug is located, where he was bishop, to Thrace, up in the northwest, and then finally to this region of Pontus, close to Pontus, in the city of Gangra. He goes through 4 years of exile. Philoxenos goes through 4 years in exile and basically house arrest. But what he does is he continues to write to these different communities, to teach them the faith, to stress upon them the need for monasticism, to live and teach and write about the faith. And he continues to do this. Finally, after 4 years of being in house arrest or under house arrest, Emperor Justin I has Philoxenos executed. And this happens in a terrible way. Emperor Justin I orders that Philoxenos be locked in a room, and he fills up the room with smoke. And more Philoxenos, this great father of the church, he dies. He is killed by suffocation because of the great smoke, and it's believed that possible toxins were also a part of that as a way of torturing him. And unfortunately, he dies. But he dies in the Lord, putting his trust and faith in the Lord, who he served so diligently during his time of his ministry. And what we see is his followers, his disciples, they take his remains to the east, where he is originally from, eventually to the region of Turabdin, and first it goes to a city in Midyat, which has a church in his name, and then eventually it's taken to the city of Kartmin, which is in this region of Turabdin. And I'll show you on a map what that looks like. So this is the region of Turabdin here. We can see Syria, Iraq, Turkey, all that comes together. This is the region, the ancient homeland of what the Syriac community, where they hail from. And then in Turabdin, there's a closer map. It is in the Deiro of Mor Gabriel, which is the monastery of Mor Gabriel, is where his remains are currently. And this is again the ancient homeland of the Syriac tradition and the Syriac community. And what the monastery looks like at present is this. This is Mor Gabriel Monastery. This is where the bishop of Turabdin, who serves in the Syriac Orthodox Church, this is where his bishopric, his headquarters is. And here is an image of the tomb of Mor Philoxenos. It says Mor Philoxenos Hasio the Mabbug. Hasio means bishop, so Mor Philoxenos, the bishop of Mabbug. The year that is given here on his tomb is 522, but in greater tradition, we know that it is 523 when he passed away in the Lord, when he was martyred in his faith for Christ. Dearly beloved, when looking at the Malangara tradition, very recently we had a very great blessing. A monastery was started in the name of Mor Philoxenos of Mabbug in the town of Muattiwara in Kerala. And recently, His Beatitude, the Catholicos of India, Morbiseus Joseph I, consecrated this monastery that is in Muattiwara. And along with that, he installed a relic of Mor Philoxenos of Mabbug. This is believed to be and accepted to be the first such relic installed in Malangara, the relic of Mor Philoxenos of Mabbug, the first time that happens. And this is a monastery that is newly formed. It was just consecrated in early November. And again, it is a blessing both for the Syriac and Malangara tradition and the joint Syriac Orthodox Church at large to have this relic and this tomb of this great father who suffered for the faith, as we just saw. Dearly beloved, as we come to the end here and close and look at the legacy of More Philoxenos, we are reminded of the fact that he was a defender of the Orthodox faith, the Miaphysite formula, which is still what the church believes, and also the traditions of monasticism. He wrote extensively. There are many texts that are available in English that have been translated to show what this faith is that More Philoxenos taught. And we also have gospel commentaries. They are no longer available in written form, but it is known that he did write this. And we also have the Anaphora, a holy Qurbana text written by Saint Philoxenos of Mabbug, which is available both in English and Malayalam, and of course in the original Syriac. This More Philoxenos, dearly beloved, is the one we remember in the fifth Tubden, when we hear the names Dioscorus, Timothy, Philoxenos, Antimus, and John. That Philoxenos, dearly beloved, is Saint Philoxenos of Mabbug, this martyr who taught the faith, who died for the faith, who handed down the faith to us. And he serves as a reminder to us of the fact that even if you're the only one standing up for the truth, you still do it because you do it out of love for the truth and ultimately a love for Christ. He was willing to stand for the truth, even if it meant that he would be tortured, even if it meant he would be in house arrest, even if it meant he would be exiled from his bishopric, from his homeland, from his churches. He was willing to accept that because ultimately he saw it as a way of following Christ who died on the cross. Again, remember, St. Philoxenos was adamant about adding crucified for us in the Trisagion. So the next time when we say crucified for us and are reminded of Christ, the Son of God, when we hear the name of Philoxenos read in the fifth Tubden, maybe we remember the contributions and the sufferings of this great father whose feast day we commemorate yesterday, December the 5th. May the feast day of More Philoxenos of Mabbug and his efforts, his teaching, his writings, and his martyrdom be an inspiration and guide for us in our walk with Christ. May God bless us all.